we're now coming to that point where we're starting to consider the anatomy of the beanstalk itself, the vines that compose the beanstalk. Well, what you need to do is take a sheet of newspaper and you roll it up and make it into a tube. You take 3 of those, and about 3 inches from the top you put a strip of sellotape. This means that we can join this this part of the vine to another vine if we leave it so that it's open like that. It also means we can join it on to the leaves and to the flowers. And what you simply do is just plait what you have there. You plait it quite loosely, and this will make the vine part of the beanstalk. Just gently. It's got a structure, but still flexible. You've taken something that's in 2 dimensions, and by plaiting it, you've now made it 3-dimensional, but it does have a certain amount of flexibility. Take that, and again, put some sellotape around the outside. And I think that what you've got is a fine structure that is very naturalistic looking, and you can join that on to another one, which just happens to be here. Again, push those in together towards each other and overlap them like that. And the fact that it isn't uniform in size, shape or width is all the better when you come to consider that there's very little in nature is exactly the same shape and size. So, go with a couple of pieces. And I would say that a length of 2 newspapers is certainly sufficient. Now, to give that a more naturalistic look, we could leave it like that, or you could paint it. But what I'm going to show you next is that you can take green sugar paper and wrap that around there, and that will make it look like a proper beanstalk. Please make sure, and I've found this out from personal experience, the best effect is using crepe paper or tissue paper wrapped around. But the trouble with tissue paper and crepe paper is it has a large number of dyes in it that are water soluble, which will be transferred to the children's fingers. And whilst I could do it myself, I think that it's better to use something that doesn't transfer quite as much dye. But I'll show you that in a moment. Right, so now we've plaited our newspaper and we've made some of the vine. We've joined it together in the middle using sellotape. You could leave it just like that. I think that's quite interesting. You don't have to coat all of them. You could paint them, but I think that that's quite a lot of paint for a very small effect. And what I would recommend is the use of old backing paper. And here I've got some old backing paper, green. It doesn't have to be just green. And you could sit and painstakingly dab it on gently like that. But I've got to be honest that this isn't lazy technology. But what you're doing is you're putting on a lot of paste like that, using your hands, and stick your fingers in the paste to hold it in place. And what happens is the backing paper that you've got here and the glue work together, they bind together, and they strengthen the structure. Okay, you've got something that was a sheet of newspaper that wouldn't have held any kind of weight at all, and I love the effect that that makes. Now, I think I did mention that what I'd used previously, or I tried it, but I didn't realise just how much of the dye would come out. When I used crepe paper, the fingers get more dye on than the actual structure. So there you go, with just one strip. I know what you're thinking. All this time we've been just throwing backing of paper away and we could have used it. Well, easy as anything. Dip it into the paste, wind it around, rub some more on with your fingers. And there's the joint. Just there, that's the joint with all of the sellotape on. And this backing paper, because it does become quite malleable once it's a little bit wet, it even tears, and just put it over the top. And I've got to say, I quite like that effect, that it's got a stripe to it, it's got a structure to it. It's not just a single line, it's got double layers and single layers. Oh, it could quite well sound like David Bellamy when I'm doing this. Oh, you just wipe it on. But there you go, you put it on top. It doesn't take very long. Very satisfying. Rub your fingers over the top. Once it's dried, it's not going to be sticky. And I've got to say, if you compare the two, if you have the ordinary paper here, and you have the stuff that's been used with the backing paper, as you can see, I'll put down some black plastic bin bags here, some dustbin sacks. Put some more on top, like that. Just wrap it around. The fact that it is uneven makes it look all the more like the real thing. And I have put some dustbin sacks down, because this is something that if you were to lay it down on anything other than plastic, it could be carrier bags, but I've got to say, I think that black bags are about the best. Put it on that. And if you just leave them to sit on top of this, it will dry, and yes, it might stick a little bit to the sacks. That's just torn there, so just move that back. But you will be able to peel it off. There you go, like that. And if you make them in 2 lengths at a time, 2 lengths of newspaper at a time, and you leave them to dry like this, you can get quite a number on a black plastic sack. And they'll dry, might need to be turned over. That's why I left the ends open. You can turn it over and let it dry. And it's usually dry within a short space of time, perhaps overnight. And what happens is these structures, because you've bound them with glue, you've wrapped them around, you've now got 4 pieces of paper all working one with another, it does become quite resilient.